My name is Lauren Deems, and I'm a senior at Arkansas. I will be discussing Sheaves of Wheat by Vincent van Gogh, which is located in the Dallas Museum of Art in Dallas, Texas. I'm sure we're familiar with Van Gogh and have probably seen his more famous works such as The Starry Night or his self-portrait. He was born in 1853 in Holland. Growing up, he dabbled in many different professions, but in 1880 his brother Theo convinced him to focus more on his drawings, so he moved to Brussels to be with other artists and work on his technique. Unfortunately, he lived very poorly and painted in the realism style until 1886 when he moved to Paris. Here he met other artists and became inspired by their new style. His art became brighter and themes changed from realistic to impressionistic. He later moved out of Paris to the south of France, and his style became looser and more expressive. Here in 1888, he had his famous ear incident where he cut off his own ear and was then hospitalized for mental illness. He soon recovered and continued to work in a countryside that was supposed to be good for his inspiration and illness. Sadly, he took his own life in 1890 when he shot himself in the chest, ironically in a wheat field. This was painted in 1890 when he was under the care of a physician. He often painted wheat and believed that it was a central metaphor of the cycle of life and the creative process. This piece was one of 12 landscapes he painted in the remaining months of his life, but this one was different because it focused on these 8 sheaves closely rather than looking over a distant field. Though he died before we could find their exact intention, it's assumed they were to be a decorative ensemble, possibly for his doctor. This is a landscape style painted with oil on canvas. It has asymmetrical balance and is made up of short, flat, angled lines. The fact that none of the lines are directly horizontal or vertical gives a sense of calmness. They vary in size, shape, form, making it natural and organic. The lines make the audience's eye circle about the picture and never leave the page or focus too heavily on one specific point, giving it a sense of fluidity and movement. This also conveys a good sense of perspective. There's foreshortening in how the sheaves get smaller as they move farther away. We see a horizon line with the green hills, and the trees in the back are smaller, creating depth by using proportion. These shapes in the piece are biomorphic. They all slouch in their own way and express an organic feel. We also see a good handling of light and color. Bright yellows are the predominant color, giving a sense of sunlight and warmth. A light blue, almost lavender purple color is used to create depth and shadow and balance out the warm colors. The lack of harsh, dark coloring continues with the calm, natural, bright theme. The lines give it a flowing, straw-like texture. I also analyzed this painting biographically with Vincent van Gogh's life. The countryside landscape shows that he was trying to get away from the stress of Paris city life. His use of seemingly bright, happy colors could show he was trying to soothe himself. The lazy shapes could show how he was feeling tired, both mentally and physically. The movement and dynamics of the line could reflect his inner conflicts. As mentioned, he saw wheat as a metaphor for the cycle of life, which could be why he painted so much of it so close to the end of his own life. This is part of the post-impressionism movement, which started in the late 19th century and featured vivid colors and distinct brushstrokes. We see this color theme here with the glowing golds and brilliant blues. It also shows a specific trend in post-impressionism, which is the tendency to explore emotional content over formal values, so we use colors to capture mood instead of using colors realistically. An influence on this piece would be Monet and his use of color. An influence I think can be seen when looking at Monet's grain stack, Sunset. He was also influenced by pointillism, developed by Georges Seurat, where tiny dots of unmixed colors would fuse to make subtle hues visible. While Van Gogh did not take the precise approach Seurat did, his use of expressive color that meshed together to enhance the emotional power of color show the influence it had on him. The last influence is Japonism. This, too, is something he discovered in Paris, and we see its influence here with unusual spatial effects, attention to details from nature, and joyful atmosphere. One of his most notable influences would be Paul Gauguin. The two met in Paris, and he joined him when he moved to the south of France, where they lived in Arles in the Yellow House, another famous painting of Van Gogh's. He adopted Gauguin's technique of painting from memory, which led his works to becoming more attractive and less realistic. I chose this piece because I'm interested in Van Gogh and the post-impressionism movement. This grew the past spring when I traveled to Amsterdam and saw his works all throughout the city. I enjoy the color. The abundance of yellow makes it feel bright and warm, while the blue gives it some contrast, and I think it's a beautiful and fitting alternative to black or gray. The edges give the work a soft appearance and selling a sense of peace and relaxation. I can see how painting something like this would be therapeutic for him. Overall, I think it's a beautiful, vivid piece, and I'm lucky to be able to see it here in Dallas.